All right. Well, thanks for coming back to the Bigfoot Society podcast. I have Marc Myrsell with me today. Uh, I did get that right, correct, Mark?
That is correct. Thank
Awesome.
you.
I was like, I've listened to so many podcasts with you in the last few weeks. I better. But Mark is a pretty cool dude. He does all sorts of stuff. He is a land surveyor by trade, also an aquarium owner in Westport, Washington,
Right.
and he's also into playing music and also known for some other things. Maybe want to flesh out the intro a little bit, kind of tell your backstory a little bit, Mark.
Well, I mean, you pretty much covered it all,
Okay. All right, cool.
except for the other things that you were talking about. But yeah, I was raised just west of Portland, in a
Oh,
what used to be a small town called Newburgh, and my dad got licensed as a land surveyor in 1963, and I started chopping brush and carrying stakes when I was about 10 or 12 years old. And I was basically raised as a land surveyor. And then I ended up getting licensed in Oregon in 1992 and Washington in 1993, and bought the business from dad in 95 and been running the family land surveying business ever since. So I have like a really long history of
awesome.
land surveying. It was really a luxury, I got to tell you, Jeremiah, growing up as a land surveyor, because starting from scratch, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah.
Um, but pursuant to those other things that you were talking about, I was born in '66, and so I grew up in that age, coming of age in the late '60s, early '70s, where there was this like big push in pop culture of stuff like unexplained mysteries, the
Exactly.
unknown,
Yep.
and that there was a bunch of like B movies and docudramas that I saw like at the drive-in.
Oh man.
Actually, Newburgh Highway 99W Drive-In, which is still in existence,
Wow.
and late night TV stuff that gave rise to shows like In Search of
Mm-hmm.
and The Night Stalker. And when I realize now that when I was 7 or 8 or 9 years old, I just ate that stuff up like
Oh yeah.
crazy. And so that's basically the short story of my lead in about how I got involved in Ape Canyon.
Yeah.
There was a movie called Sasquatch Legend of Bigfoot,
Okay.
um, circa 1976, I think, where Sasquatch Legend of Bigfoot, jokingly, the acronym is SLOB. But when I watched Slob on the late night on the late on the late night TV, they had in that movie they had a recreation of the whole Ape Canyon incident of 1924, and
Okay.
a lot of folks, when you look on the internet, look that up, you'll see these shadowy figures up there on the cliff throwing boulders down onto the
Right. Exactly.
and that image stuck with me
Yeah.
like crazy for sure.
It's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's just I think it's like no matter who you are or what generation you're from when it comes to bigfooting, once you hear that story, it's just like it knocks you back. It's like, what is going on here? Like this is nuts. Um, do you mind who this is a loaded grenade I'm gonna toss at you, but do you have like an elevator pitch for Ape Canyon or you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, and I try to keep this under an hour or two.
Right, yeah.
You know
The
what I
Shane Corson 2016 episode is like fantastic. Monster X, like that's intense. That's a
Yeah.
good episode. Yeah.
What I do, and I know that we have limited time, so I'm going to try to keep this short. Um, uh, just in case
Hmm.
you have viewers who don't know what Ape Canyon is all
Right.
about. What happened is that on July the 11th, 1924, a group of miners came off of Mount St. Helens where they had been working a gold mine, a very small gold mine, for about 2 years. That spring, late spring, they had just built a 10 by 20 foot cabin
Mm.
um, right by the gold mine. and they came off the mountain and they met Bill Welch, who was head of the Columbia National Forest, now brought into the Gifford Pinchot National Forest at Spirit Lake.
Okay.
And they told Bill, and they met his wife Wilma, we're giving up the mine, we're giving up the cabin after working this gold mine for 2 years, which allegedly had very good assays on the gold mine. I haven't been able to access the assay records on that because they're not public, but the gold mine was doing well. But they said, nope, we're giving it all up. Forget it. Absolutely not. After the previous night, Thursday, July the 10th, after surviving an all-night attack onto their cabin with these creatures, mountain devils, as they say,
Right.
climbing up on the roof, raining down rocks on top of the cabin, trying to beat their way in. The miners that night had torn apart their beds to bolster the door while they're held up inside this tiny 10-foot by 20-foot cabin,
Mm.
trying to keep these creatures out. Later in the research I was doing, I found out that actually something was actually digging underneath the cabin. When the cabin was visited later, there was this huge
What?
hole where something was trying to dig its way in the
Oh
couple of days
man.
before, right? So
Mm.
they're like, forget it, we're giving it all up.
No way.
And Bill Welch, the forest ranger, said, you know, the patriarch of the whole mining crew was a guy named Marion Smith. And he was talking with Bill that morning as they were coming off the mountain, and we got him, Bill, we got him. We shot them. You know,
Man.
Marion, what'd you shoot? Mountain devil. And Bill says, mountain devil? Really? Like cougar? No, a mountain devil. I told you about.
Mm.
Was it Wolverine? No, it wasn't Wolverine. No, mountain devil. And Bill's like, oh, okay, Marion, yeah, whatever. Marion goes back to the truck to blast their way back home to Kelso. And Bill followed Marion as Marion is getting back into his pickup. And Bill said in an interview in 1966, before he passed on, that when he followed Marion around to that truck and looked inside where the other miners had already gotten into the truck, he
Mm-hmm.
said he had never seen a group of grown men more scared in their life. There was what they were
Wow.
white as sheets. And so um, that night it was is the basic rundown of the Ape Canyon attack. You got to remember though that the miners had experienced uh, a different kind of phenomenon, sightings
Mm.
for the previous and sounds. They saw footprints for the previous at least 2 years while they're up there working on the gold mine. So,
Wow. That is awesome. That was a really good summary too, actually.
oh, thank
Bravo.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want a really like longer version of that, that's amazing. Go listen to the Monster X radio from 2017. Uh, and I think it's a two-parter, but it's like it's solid, dude. It's solid. I was like, why isn't this in book form? Maybe is it in book form?
Well, it's about to be, sort of.
Is it
Um,
really? Oh
yeah,
wow.
yeah, it is. I mean, again, I'm going to try to keep this short.
No,
um,
go ahead. It's fine.
I married. I know everyone is married to the most wonderful person in the world,
Totally.
but really, I am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I married my wife Catherine, and she has a long, long history of library work with her and her mom and her grandmother. And
Mm,
you know, I've always enjoyed libraries, but I had no idea until I met Catherine. We've gotten a lot involved with different libraries, but the Washington State Library here in Washington
okay.
for a number of years has run a zine contest. Zine is
Oh
short
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
magazine.
Little magazines, right?
On a magazine, and
Yeah.
it was a zine contest just for fun,
Okay.
and you don't well you get a prize for it. It's a small prize because it's a library, and I
Okay.
was always and it has the zine contest has to be about Washington State history,
Mm,
and the submitters have to be Washington State residents. Well, about a year ago, we had bad snows for about a week or so, and I
Okay.
couldn't go anywhere. So it's like right here in this room, I sat down. I'm going to make a zine about Ape Canyon called Mountain
Wow.
Devil, and it's
Oh,
about
nice.
30 pages. And I submitted it, and amazingly, it won. I got
Wow.
I got
Cool.
I got $75 for
All right, dude.
and,
It's party
and
time.
bragging rights.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that little zine Mountain Devil actually inspired me to make the bigger book,
Mm.
which is getting towards completion. I'm planning like around 200 to 250 pages.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Everything you want to know about
Yeah.
Ape
Oh
Canyon
man.
1924. So
The whole time listening to other interviews with you, I'm like, this guy needs to make a book right
thanks.
now. Like he needs to make a book because it's like because you kept saying like, yeah, I put this up in like this forum a few years ago, and I'm like, is this gonna get lost? Like, why is it this? So I'm super happy that you're making a book. That is amazing, and I'm gonna be all
Thanks.
about it.
Okay.
Um, man, yeah, it's like so I'm in Iowa, right? I grew up in Massachusetts, and so I'm in my late 30s, but I haven't really gotten into like the older Bigfoot movies. And like last week, I for some reason I was like I stumbled upon In Search of Bigfoot, just
Oh,
fell in love with it. I was like, this is the coolest thing. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like, okay, it's Mount St. Helens, right? That area.
that's correct.
And I'm
Yeah.
I'm talking to Mark Matsky. I'm like,
Yeah.
this movie is awesome. Like, how did I not know about this? And he's like, yeah, it's crazy to think that same area is like where the mountain exploded. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. The whole that documentary is before the mountain exploded because it's like 76 and the mountain exploded in 83, right?
The
Something like
first
that.
the first eruption was 1980.
Okay.
Was
Okay.
1980, and then there were subsequent eruptions, smaller ones. Um,
So cool.
for that. And actually, I remember I was 14 years old driving with a friend over the Markham Bridge in Portland, which is the highest bridge,
Oh
and I
yeah.
had some other friends in the back, and it was that day in May in 1980, and we're rounding the bridge. It's a clear day, and
Mm.
the mountain is just going off, and
Oh
everyone
no.
in the back was like, "What's that?" I'm like, "That's Mount St. Helens. Have you not been listening to the news?" But
Wow.
that's when it went off, and we'll get into this more.
Okay.
That was one of the questions of where the attack took place in 1924 is incredibly close to
Mm.
the peak of the mountain. I'm
Oh
going to
wow.
estimate about a mile and a half or
Mm.
so, and it's right on the east shoulder of the mountain, way up at the timberline. And so, why why could we think that any evidence of where this attack took place, any evidence of the cabin site, any
Yeah.
evidence of the miners' activities, any evidence of the mine could survive that eruption in 1980, which of course was just cataclysmic, right? What
Mm.
happened is that the mountain mainly blew off to the north, but of course it's a volcano and it's
Right.
blowing up. The majority of the blast headed north, but it like instantly melted all the glaciers
Mm.
around it, right?
Oh man.
So this is all they were already starting to melt by May 16th or whatever the date was. But of course, a volcano is going to melt it instantly.
Yeah,
So
right.
immediately we have pyroclastic flows running down the mountain at 60 miles an hour. But also on top of that, we have melted glaciers mixed with mud and rock just shooting down the mountain like crazy, just scouring everything, right?
Mm.
Well, the through a very very strange topographical coincidence, basically, um, where Pumice Butte is just east of the peak of the mountain, heading down there. Pumice Butte is defined on the north side by a canyon and on the south side by what is now known as Ape Canyon. Also shooting off to the south is the Muddy River. So these mud flows were barreling down the mountain like crazy. They went up and scoured the west side of Pumice Butte, splashed back down, and then the drainage from there went into those canyons around Pumice Butte and down the river, down the Muddy River,
Hmm.
thereby spared the east side of the butte, where fortunately later, around 1984, a USGS report was published by a fellow named Molyneux and his partner, where they went around the mountain and looked at the impacts of the eruption
Okay.
4 years previously. Fortunately, one of their study areas was Ape Canyon and Pumice Butte. They
Mm,
noted all this about how everything came down and went down into the canyons and went down the Muddy River, but they noted that on the east side of Pumice Butte, there was about that much, maybe an inch or two worth of ash and pumice.
oh.
Below that was just natural ground because
Hmm.
all the ash and pumice shot straight up into the atmosphere, in the stratosphere, and the winds took it off. So the east side of Pumice Butte was very, very much spared. So when I
That's
started to get
awesome.
into the research of where the cabin site of the 1924 attack could have been, there was not a map or anything like that. I started to realize it could have very well been on the east side of Pumice Butte that was spared by the eruption. And so later,
Wow.
that's where we started to find evidence of the cabin site.
That is so cool.
By some
Man,
strange coincidence, it was all spared.
you're definitely considered, I would say, I'm gonna say you're definitely the expert on, or there's different ways. You're definitely, I'm gonna say, I know you're a very humble guy, but you are, I would say you're the expert on things like Ape Canyon, and also there's some other things that you've been looking into as well.
Mhm.
Shane has a way of saying you're like the Indiana Jones of like Bigfoot attack stories. Is that how he
Well,
says it?
yeah, you can. I'm kind of embarrassed about that, but yeah, that
That's really cool. Is this
you can.
Temple of Doom indie, or is it Last Crusade,
No,
or is it the Fate of Atlantis game from LucasArts? Like, I kind of want to know, but we'll just leave it
yeah.
at
Well,
that. But
actually, the being a land surveyor, I gotta say, I feel like, well, first of all, you can attribute that term to Shane, because
okay,
Shane was the one who came up with it, and
fantastic.
but being a land surveyor, um, the only thing I'm not humble about is that I think I'm a good finder,
Nice.
because it's like, Jeremiah, you have 5 acres and it was
Hmm.
surveyed, in 1890. And there are 2-inch iron pipes way out in the middle of the woods. I can find those iron pipes about where your property corners are.
Oh
And
man.
so I tend to be a good finder, and we can talk more about that. But I gotta say, as far as the Indiana Jones kick, if it's historical and there's any physical evidence left, nothing is off my bucket list. I
That's
mean,
awesome.
give the Ark of the Covenant, sure, I could find
Yeah,
that.
let's rock and roll.
Anyway.
um, how long did it take you to get how many years of research did it take to get all this Ape Canyon stuff together? Your file must be super thick of like if there's an Ape Canyon folder, which hopefully it is kept really safe in a fireproof box. But
Sorry,
okay, it's not.
it was just under the desk.
Oh, snap. It's in a really cool leather satchel.
Yeah, my friend Brad, who's been with me, well, to answer your question, I've been working on Ape Canyon, golly, for 10 years or so.
Hmm.
And my friend Brad calls this the football.
Yeah, it is. It totally is. Yeah, it's the
This,
football.
this this is a
Nice.
leather briefcase that I got from my dad that he never really used. But anyway, this is basically the ape. This is Ape Canyon, right,
Oh my
right
heavens.
there.
Look at that.
got
Oh
some
boy.
got some aerial photos,
Yeah, that's
got a
cool,
lot of
man.
newspaper jazz in there.
That's cool.
And I have a lot on, I have, of course, a lot digitally as well.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both, again, back on the kick with my wife Catherine. Well, I need to clean up my computer files and get everything off of the computer, printed on paper, and put in the
Mm,
file. And I
mm,
have about one or two more working trips up at Ape Canyon. My main one is that I need to map the evidence that was found. I need to map the evidence of the cabin, different features of the
Okay.
story, and then once all that's done, the that file, the football, gets copied, and
Wow.
copies go to safe places. Number one is going to be the head of archaeology for the Gifford Pinchot
Mm,
National Forest,
awesome.
and
Yeah.
then also a copy goes to Cliff at
Very
his
good.
museum,
Yep.
and one
Fellow's so
copy goes
good.
to Brad. Because the thing is, I don't want to get hit by a bus and have all these Bigfooters knocking on Catherine's door saying, "Oh, do you have that Ape Canyon stuff before Mark got hit by a bus and died?" You know.
Wait, who's Brad?
Oh, Brad Angus, aka Angus
Oh,
Man.
I've heard the name. Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Brad's been my friend since 1996.
Okay.
And we're great friends, and he's been with me almost on every Ape Canyon trip.
That's awesome. That's really
So
cool.
yeah, he's kind of like under the radar kind of Ape Canyon Bigfoot guy. But anyway,
Those are the guys you want to talk to. Yeah.
yeah, right,
That's cool.
exactly.
That's cool. Yeah.
To answer your question though, I got involved researching Ape Canyon, which I kind of felt like I was, well, I wasn't researching it from scratch, but I wanted to research it from scratch, as
Mm,
if, like we talked about these recreations in search of, or with Sasquatch legend of Bigfoot. We saw these recreations when we were kids on these TV shows and in these movies, but I wanted to approach it as if I had never heard of it before. And
mm,
so that was in the vicinity of like 10, 11 years ago or
okay.
so, something like that.
Interesting.
And with Ape Canyon in particular, um, I started getting into it and just, doing document research. I approached this as a land surveyor. What document evidence is in the record of what happened in 1924? Well, between 1922 and 1924, what document evidence is there? And I
Mm-hmm.
found that there was just this tremendous amount, this mountain of document evidence
Wow.
of 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 interviews with the miners, some photos, mining records, all kinds of different records that lent itself to Ape Canyon, that provided a much larger, richer story than we had, that I didn't expect. I never thought, and so that's why I say it's 10 years ago, and I'm still working on it,
Man.
because there's so much to grind through,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I speak at conferences or I talk to people,
Okay.
and it's like, oh my goodness, someone approaches me, or I find out another lead, another little tidbit
Oh man. Yeah.
regarding Ape Canyon,
Mm.
and you can't leave that alone. You got to
Yeah, you
pursue
can't.
that
Yep.
lead, you know.
Exactly.
So,
No, I totally get it. One of my audience questions from Western Bigfoot exploration uh is how hard is it to, so this is referring to Ape Canyon, obviously.
uh,
How hard is it to get where they think it is, and when can we go? So it's kind of like half funny, but half. So really, it's hard to get there, right?
extremely,
Okay, like really
extremely.
hard,
Yes,
really, really. Wow.
yes. I've had more than one person. "Mm, I really want to go.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, you're calling me up. It's like, Mark, 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 can you take me? Can you take me? And I send you photos, and I'm like, when you come out, Jeremiah, I will take you up there if you want, but I'm going to send you photos. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
explain
Yeah.
everything as best I can. And I've done that with plenty of people. You have to go up to that top of Pumice Butte, the mountain Elms is over there a mile. You get to the top of Pumice Butte, and you have to go down that butte. And I have gotten a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, maybe 8 or 9 people, down to the bottom and up safely. but I've gotten so many people up to the top of the butte where you're ready to make the descent down to the cabin
Yeah.
site, and they look down and they're like,
They're like, no.
I'm going to go back to camp.
Oh
I'll catch you
wow.
later, where they just bail, because it's very scary. It's over a hard scrabble scree slope with a lot
Mm,
of funky loose rocks, and
yikes.
at the end of those loose rocks, just in case you lose your footing, there's
Yeah.
nothing to grab onto. And
Oh,
at the bottom of the slope, you can slide on down to the bottom of the slope, and then you're dropping down 200 feet to the bottom of Ape Canyon.
no way.
Way.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Are there like I'm immediately imagining like a Bigfoot just like totally running straight up that like doesn't even matter. Like that would be crazy because they can
Well,
like do stuff like well the stories always say that like they're like boom they're up the mountain or like
that's one thing
so.
about the east side of Pumice Butte, where the 1924 attack took place.
Hmm.
Um, Getting back to that USGS report,
Yeah.
uh, I where they mentioned that the east side of Pumice Butte is very little, impacted by the eruption. I got aerial photos of this immediate area as far back as I could. The early aerial photos was like 1952 or 1953. They were very high altitude aerial photos, but they were high resolution, so I was able to like get paper prints and really zoom in on the area. I
Mm.
found that immediate area where the cabin site is, comparing aerial photos from the 50s, the 70s, 80s, it, it's basically stayed the same.
Wow.
And again, getting back down to the cabin site, man, once you're down to the cabin site, holy smokes, they're a Doug fir down there that are a good 60, 72 inches in diameter. These
What?
massive, massive trees,
Oh man.
only, again, a mile and a half from the top of the mountain. These
That's
trees are
crazy.
much, much older than 1924, right? So they survived
Yeah.
the eruption. I found that the landscape on the east side of Pumice Butte, as far as like where bushes are, where rock outcroppings are, it was the same before the eruption and after the eruption. And so,
Hmm.
following the story of the miners, their first encounter with sighting one of these creatures was before July the 4th of 1924, where Marion and Fred Beck were going to the spring to get water, about 75 feet away from the cabin. uh, they get to the spring, and they see down there, behind a cedar tree, there's this large 7-8 foot tall hair covered creature peeking out from behind this tree. Fred Beck takes 3 shots immediately, and they said that the Fred and Marion were well known as being crack shots, and
Okay.
also being very, very square, and
Gotcha.
very the pun, no pun intended, but straight shooters. What they
Right.
said was what happened, and what they were gonna do is what they were gonna do. Fred and Marion said you could see the skin of the cedar tree, the bark of the cedar tree, skinning off with Fred's bullets. They go over there, and they get to the cedar tree, and there's no animal, there's no blood, there's no fur, there's no nothing. And they are there at the tree, and it's like, what were we shooting at? And up the other side of the draw, you can see this creature going up. The way that Marion and Fred described it, the creature was going up this other slope, this other scree slope, turning around. I often like to think much like the Patterson Gimlin film, of turning around and looking at them and continuing up the draw and down the other side, right?
That's crazy.
So, I mean, this is very precipitous, dangerous area, right?
Man.
And it's
Oh
incredibly
man.
dangerous, so half the stuff, um, again, Catherine's great, because I came home and she was like, I don't want to know what you did. don't tell me what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, just it's good you're back. Keep
Yeah,
coming
right,
back.
exactly.
Keep
Yeah,
coming
right,
back alive.
right.
When you go to the campsite, does it ever go through your mind? Are you like amped up, or like are you like, okay, just be cool, or like maybe they're gonna be here this time? Like, does that ever go through your head when you go to the cabin site?
Well, heck yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Again, short story. I'm going to try to make this short. But
Okay.
the weird thing about it is that we found, um, at the time, I felt that yes, we found definitive evidence in 2013
Hmm.
of the cabin site. We ended up finding, it was only me and one other friend, Gabe Temmie, who made it down that far. Like I said, everyone bailed and stayed up at the
Wow.
top. But we found evidence of the foundation of the cabin. We
Okay.
found nails in the ground. We found a spoon. We found baling wire. As far as the foundation goes, we found the cabin is a 10, or was a 10-foot by 20-foot cabin. It When you're out there, it's just rocks and trees. But down just below grade, we were able to find the foundation, an old rotten log on the long side of the 20-foot side, finding nails in the ground, and then we found the foundation log with the nail still driven into it,
That's
where you
crazy.
take the head of the nail out of this hunk of wood and
Hmm.
you're pulling the rusty nail out, and there's still wood attached to it. I spoke with a friend who really knows early 20th century hardware.
Okay.
He's like
Nice.
he's just like really into old hardware,
Yeah,
and
totally.
I sent him photos of these nails, and he's like, "Yes, these are early 20th century, late 19th century nails." Talked to a log cabin guy. I didn't understand how to build a log cabin, but building a log cabin, you lay the log down, the first log down, and you
Hmm.
have to drive nails
Hmm.
diagonally into the top in at intervals along that log, so that when you put the next log on top, it just doesn't fall off, right? And
Gotcha.
so that's what we were finding in this foundation, right? Of this foundation log along there. So anyway, that was the 2013 discovery, and as
Okay.
I've worked more through the field research, through more of the document research, then yeah, that's the cabin site, 95% sure.
That's
But
awesome.
getting back to your story about trepidation,
Yeah.
um, 2013 was a strange trip. Not only did we find evidence of the cabin site from 1924, but it was a strange weekend. I got to tell you,
Mm.
we were up there on Friday,
Okay.
and there's a place where we camp close by, and Brad. This is way up above the cabin site, maybe about 1,000 feet, maybe about a quarter of a mile away. And Brad, it was about midnight or one, and Brad's in his tent basha tarp thing, and he's like, man, I got to go pee. He gets up, middle of the night, it's dark, nobody around. Just west of us, he hears something.
Oh man.
The
Oh no.
way Brad described it, he described it as a drunken biker.
Uh.
Something out there about 1,000 feet out in the darkness, in the woods, talking to him. And like Brad says, all you can do
Oh
is get
no.
back in your tent and pull the sleeping bag up over your ears and close your eyes.
And be like, don't think of Willow Creek. Don't think of the
Yeah,
movie
right,
Willow Creek.
exactly. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
go to bed.
Or like Blair Witch Project or something,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
Totally.
I just want to go home.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
so Saturday night, um, sat, Saturday day was the day where we ended up finding evidence of the cabin site.
Okay.
So we're back up at camp, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is like a dream. I still feel like it's a dream. I can't believe that this actually happened. That finding the cabin site evidence. It was late June of 2013, and the sun's going down, so it's summertime, and you're way up at the timberline. There are not a lot of trees around, so the sun goes down pretty darn late. It was about 8:30 or so, and the sun's kind of going down, and we're hanging out, and a friend, Ben, is on the edge of sort of a small draw, and he's like, shut up, come here, and we're like, well, no, what? Shut up, be quiet, come here. We all stand up. There's 5 of us. We all stand at the edge, and up there, up above us on the ridge line, you can hear it. Something up there in the trees just below the glacier line.
Oh man.
Is something up there is talking.
Are we talking like Sierra sound style?
No.
What?
And we're like, what the hell is that? Okay, this goes on. It's a little chatter. It sounds like the Sierra sounds.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so this goes on for about 3 or 4 minutes. And then if you could follow your eye to the south towards the Lewis River along that ridge line, about 4 or 5 minutes later, there's something else up there. And so you can hear the 2 of them talking back and forth to each other. They do this for another 5 minutes or so. And then there's a third one. Another 5, 6, 7 minutes later, there's a 4th one way down there. And it's like some people heard the 5th one. I heard the 5th one way, like, I don't know, about 3 miles down the ridgeline. You have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 in sequence, and they're talking back and forth to each other. And I have never had, as Shane Corson says, that confirmation experience. There's a creature right there in front of you.
Okay.
That is kind of my confirmation experience.
I mean, that would be enough. I'd be like, dude, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what some people were talking about. It's like, we're out of here. And I'm like, yeah. Come on, let's go to bed. Come on. And so, everyone stays, and we all go to bed. And then it's about, again, it's summer. It's maybe about 6:30 or 7. And at the time, I'm just using like a little Hello Kitty dome tent with like a little screen thing at the top. I barely fit into it. I'm like
awesome.
6.5 feet tall or whatever. But I wake up about 6:30 or 7, and I can see through the screen the lumens in the morning. The light of the sun coming up is about the same amount of light that was at sunset that night before. And I wake up.
Wow.
And I start to hear them talk up on the ridge line again. Okay. So I pull the sleeping bag up over my ears and I go to bed. And so about 8 o'clock, a couple hours later, we all get up and we're making coffee. And Ben gets up with us and he's like, did you guys smell that?
No way.
And I'm like, no, I didn't smell anything. Apparently there was some smell right there where we were, enough to wake him up.
Whoa.
And I was like, and he said it was like this intense musky animal smell right there where we were. And I was like, well, did you look out? And he's like, no.
Yeah, that's the last time you look at anything.
Right, exactly.
It's like crazy, man.
I know you're just going to be a burrito wrap, and you're going to be, on David Pilates missing 411 next, So, anyways. So, but that was the strangest weekend up there. I've been up there a lot. That was the strangest weekend. So if you want to think like, in the bigger picture, the weird thing is that in the 1924 attack, there were 5 men up there. That year in 2013, there were 5 of us. And the other thing that kind of tripped me out is that in the story, of that week when the miners were attacked, Fred Beck ended up chipping a tooth,
Mm.
and he went to Marion, who had the car keys, the truck keys, and he was like, "My tooth hurts. You got to take me to the dentist." And Marion was like, "No, no, no. There's too much gold up here. We got to keep going." And so he didn't take him to the dentist. Well, the night before, I'm in my tent and I'm chewing on nuts and I'm chewing on stuff, and it's like crack, and I look
Oh
and
no.
I chip a tooth, and I'm like, it hurt a little bit. I don't have very
Oh,
good teeth. It hurt a little bit, but I looked at that and I was like, Fred Beck's tooth, man. I think,
oh
man, this is
man.
very, very strange.
Gotcha.
And
You
so
gotcha.
suddenly my mind starts going and everything starts
Yeah.
snowballing.
That's crazy. Um, there's a question. So Greg from the Patreon asked, have you considered trying to find other infamous Bigfoot encounter locations? Uh, if so, what are your top picks?
We can talk about that some more. But like I talked about, I just have one more working trip for Ape Canyon. In
Mm.
order to work on the big book for Mountain
Oh yeah,
Devil,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, I just have one more working trip because, like I said, I'm taking the football and
Yep.
copying it off and giving it over to the
Smart.
Forest Service.
Smart.
One thing I got to say is that the 1924 Ape Canyon site is listed as a historical resource
Oh,
in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, even though they never found it in the document record. They consider it a historical resource and an important archaeological site, even though they never found it. So it is protected for the Forest Service and for the Volcanic National Monument. So I want to copy all this off and give it to them um,
totally.
after I get done with the survey of the site. And so that's going to be putting to bed my working trips up to Ape Canyon as long as I'm able to. I'm probably going to go to Ape Canyon for the rest of my life because it's really cool up there.
Yeah, right.
Um, but now for the past I don't know, 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years, I've gotten involved in another project, which we can talk about later. It's called the Thompson Flat Monster.
Oh,
And the
totally.
Thompson Flat Monster was a series of events that took place in Southwest Oregon on the South Fork of the Sixes River. It's just about, oh golly, about 60 or 70 miles north of the Oregon California border, but it took place over a period of about 30 years, where there were numerous attacks in this very small, this is kind of weird, in this very small gold mining area, gold miners,
Hmm.
and one of the last ones was in 1904, where a fellow and two younger men were held up in their cabin, beaten up, and
That's
the cabin
weird.
was built up. Was beaten up by this creature. They opened up the door, and there's this big hair covered creature. This predated Ape Canyon by 20 years.
Whoa, weird.
Similarly, they took shots at the creature, seemingly to no effect.
Hmm.
The very strange thing about Thompson Flat too is that uh, it's going to be a very, very long project where I have to get into medical records and death records,
Oh wow.
because there were 4 people killed up there by unexplained means. Either their heads
Whoa.
were bashed in or their bodies were beaten to a pulp.
Oh,
So
yikes.
that's Thompson Flat.
Wow.
Yep.
So you said that is really late 1800s, early
Yes.
1900s?
Yeah. Uh, Starting, well, yeah, the mining activities started up there in 1874, and it lasted through about 1910 or so, about a 25 to 30-year period. And there was numerous sightings up there.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yep.
Um, one question I didn't get to ask earlier about the zine. I think zines. We went to Portland once for a vacation, and the zines are really cool. Like
Oh, they're
zine
fun.
culture is legit. If you don't know what we're talking about, look it up. It's crazy. But is there a way to like purchase your zine? Is like, did you only print a few, or like, what's the deal
No,
with that?
I print them on demand. I,
Oh,
I
okay, cool.
I basically just print them on demand. And so right now, I'm such a nerd junkie when it comes to like Bigfoot literature.
Mm,
Every time that someone orders one, they get it signed, and I send it out,
nice.
and it gets numbered, and it gets
Oh,
written
snap.
down. And so down in my file, every single copy of my little zine,
Yeah,
I have record of who it went out to and what
that's
state
so
it went out
cool.
to. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I tell you what, it's probably too much info for the podcast. But what I'll do, Jeremiah, is I'll send you. All I do is like I right now I have about 10 copies, and I just do PayPal, and you just email me with your PayPal payment. I'm running with $20 each,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
sure.
signed and posted page. And
Nice.
so I'll send you the info on that, and maybe you could share it out with
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I will share that, no problem, all over the place. Yeah.
okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
that is no problem. Just hook me up with the info on that.
Okay.
Um, how do you there's a question I'm trying to formulate here, and it's I feel like you could have a lot of good advice for the next generation of Bigfooters and cryptozoologists, being a Bigfoot historian.
We are the next generation. It's us, man. No, I'm just
Dude,
joking.
no, like it's it, you think I'm the next generation. There's like dudes that are like Bigfoot podcasting at age 15. Like we're not it anymore. Like
I
it's keep
know.
it it's moving, like
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
yeah. Do you have any advice for these young kids, like,
Well, of course, like
yeah.
we talked about podcasting, that's your biz. I don't know anything about it.
Or
But
well, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
as
didn't
far as
mean
the
that, but yeah,
research goes,
Yes,
uh,
yes, exactly.
as far as research goes, yeah, and I could wax philosophical on this for a very, very long time.
Mm,
But the root of it, um, again, this kind of goes back to my land surveying life.
okay.
Um, and okay, I'm going to get really boring on this for a quick
Go
second,
for it.
but
Go for it. Yeah.
but but the way land surveying works and particularly like I talked about your 5 acres or whatever property you own,
Mhm.
um, and you need to find out where your property corners are. Okay, so what do? You hire a land surveyor. The first thing that any land surveyor is going to do is look into the document record. They're going to look into the deed record. They're going to look into the survey record. If you're close to a railroad, maybe the railroad's not hasn't been there for 100 years. You're going
Okay.
to look into railroad records. You're going to look at every single piece of document evidence possible that may lend information, document evidence towards figuring out where your property corners are. Okay, so you find out in the document record, there's an iron pipe here, half a mile away, 2,640 feet. There was another iron pipe there, and say
Okay.
north of that, 1320, there's another iron pipe. I need to find those iron pipes in order to figure out your property boundaries.
Mm,
I go out in the field because you're expecting me to come out and set up the tripod and the instrument and put on my vest and chop
right.
brush. I need to find
Yeah.
those iron pipes. Okay. So
Mhm.
let's say those two iron pipes were 2,640 feet apart. Well, I measure it
Mm,
and it's 2639, it's 2641, it's 2650 or
yeah.
whatever. I turn out the angle and I go north 1320. I measure out 1322. Is that Are those the original iron pipes? Should I use them? Should I not use them? What I'm trying to say is you have document evidence
Mm,
in any kind of field of research, and you take that off document evidence and you put it to the test. You put it on the ground and you start collecting field evidence. you will find that the document evidence 100 years ago, 10 years ago, may not jibe with the field evidence that you're finding today, right? So you have to like go through it all, see what fits together, see what doesn't fit together, and try to put together the whole story. With land surveying, I have to make conclusions because that's what people pay me for.
Right.
But in Bigfoot research or any kind of research, you may not be required to come up with conclusions, but you are going to be required in order to collect all the evidence and see what matches, see what makes sense, see what doesn't make sense. I have, as an example, with 1924 with Ape Canyon, we
Mhm.
have Fred Beck's book that he wrote with his son Ronald, right? I
Right.
Fought the Ape Man of Mount St. Helens, and we have Fred's story. But we also have in the football down here, we
Right.
have interviews with the miners that were taken a week after the attack. Some of that jibes with Fred's story 40 years
Mm,
later, some of it does not. The other
interesting.
great thing is that I was able to interview a woman who's a grandmother of a good friend of mine. This older woman happens to be the daughter of one of the original miners, and
Wow.
I was able to meet her, and we talked. I got a recorded interview with her,
Oh, that's
and we
cool.
talked at length. I was able to interview Fred Beck's grandson. Rod Beck grew up with his grandfather, grew up with Fred, and I was able to get his story as well. So you're taking, in the example of Ape Canyon, you're taking um, the interviews with the miners and what the reporters saw up there in 1924. You're taking Fred Beck's book, and then you're taking interviews with family members who remember their fathers and remember their grandfathers. And now with Ape Canyon, you're able to take the field evidence.
Wow.
How do all these little pieces of the puzzle all fit together? Do they fit together or don't they? Right. So you just have to put together this whole basket full worth of clues. And when again, anytime you get this tiny little hint, oh my friend over there, he said that he saw this thing up there on the road. He
Mhm.
saw this thing up on the road, and then he saw some tracks. Who's your friend? What's his phone number?
Right.
Track down those
Yep.
leads to death, to the bitter end. You may call the friend and he's like, oh no, I didn't see that. That other guy, he was drunk and made up that story. I didn't see anything.
Right.
Or yeah, no, actually, no, I didn't see that. We're talking about another guy. Go find that
Mm.
guy, track down every single lead, track it down to its bitter end. And that's my advice for anybody doing any research in Bigfootery.
That is good advice. Um, will have you brought a sound recorder of any kind to the cabin site?
I have, and
Okay.
I got nothing.
Okay. All right.
That story, that
Yeah.
story from
Yeah.
2013, I didn't have a sound recorder, but
Oh
obviously,
man. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but obviously, I take one up
Yeah.
there now.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I would too. I would be like, yeah. I'd be like GoPro on me,
You
sound
bet.
recorder, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Man, Mark, this has been super, super fun. That was like the quickest hour I've ever chatted with
Oh
someone.
yeah,
I
we're
think
almost
it's
about an
about
hour.
been an hour. Are there any questions that I should be asking that I haven't, or I
Um,
mean,
no, but I could blather on for another couple of hours if you want me to.
oh
But
man.
but no, again, these stories. Okay, I'm very much personally very much into family history,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think everybody should be into family history for
Oh,
sure.
totally. Yeah, yeah.
And when you think about that long ago, that long ago was not that long ago. An
Mhm.
example is that the first person to be born into my family in the States was born in 1849.
Wow.
He and other members of my family came over during the famine out of Ireland. That fellow, the first person who was born in the States, he went through the whole second part of the 19th century. He was a kid when Civil War happened and all that kind of stuff. My mom remembers meeting him, my great great
Wow.
grandfather, when she was a kid, and my mom's still alive today.
Man,
And she
that's
could tell you
crazy.
stories about meeting that first person to be born in the States of me, of my family. So my mom's still alive. She can relate these stories. And so when you think about stuff that long ago for historical research, historical monster research, I mean,
Mm,
I hung out all afternoon with one of the miner's daughters. That
that's
long
wild.
ago is not that long ago. These
That's not.
stories are still alive, and these people need to be tracked down and interviewed. 1924, no. 100 years ago, 95 years ago, no. They're still around. They're still
Man.
here, and we need to track down each and every one of these historical stories, historical monster stories.
W- If there's younger or maybe not even younger people listening to this and they're like, well, where do I go to look for, am I going to go on the internet? Am I going to look on Instagram for this stuff? Like, where am I going to go and find this stuff? Where are the unknown stories? Like, where,
Oh,
you
Jeremiah,
know?
come on. Everything's on the
Yeah.
internet. It's all
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
yeah, right. Like, it's all in there. So,
No,
no,
it's not on the no,
no.
absolutely not. Um, with other projects that I'm working on, a little bit Ape Canyon, but other newer projects, we are definitely hobbled by this whole virus issue,
Oh,
and
yeah.
hobbled in the sense where I can't get into the
Mhm.
county archive. I can't get into the
Oh, yeah.
historical research archive where I need to go. But when and if we can eventually get there,
Yeah.
um, you need, again, track down your leads. You need to go
Mm,
down to the source. You need to be able to get to um, the original archive. Okay, one other example.
yeah.
I found a microfilm of a
Mhm.
newspaper article of a Bigfoot attack down in Southern Oregon,
Okay.
and the microfilm, the cameraman blurred out some of it. So I called the librarian in the small town in Myrtle Creek, Oregon, and she was a cool reference librarian, because she was like, you know what? I think the original paper copies are still down in the newspaper office. On my
Whoa.
lunch hour, I'm going to go down there and see if I can find it. And she went into the basement of the newspaper office for
Oh,
me,
man.
found the original paper, click, took a photo, and was able to send me this Bigfoot story
Oh,
from
that's cool.
1936. So these archives are still there. We just need to be able to get to them. You're not going to find 95% on Instagram or
Right.
on the internet. You need to go to the county courthouse
Mhm.
for stuff like deed records, mining records, death records, marriage records.
Okay.
You need to go to historical societies or libraries
Mm,
for newspaper microfilm. You need to just find out what you want to be looking for, kind of get
okay.
a clue, and where that archive is. It's going to be a lot of hunting and pecking. Some of this is
Interesting.
indexed, some of it's not. It's a ton of hunting and pecking, but you need to be able to get down there and look
That's
at the
awesome.
actual original document record.
That is really good, like solid advice. I think that's going to help out a lot of people actually that have no idea where to start. Do you have if like let's say one of your buddies is getting into Bigfoot research or like getting into Bigfoot, what do you tell them to what books do you tell them to start with?
Oh my goodness. Wow, that's
Yeah.
a great question.
Hmm.
Um Number one, you've no, I gotta tell you, Jeremiah, no one's ever asked me that before.
I know because I've listened to all your interviews and I'm like, why aren't we asking this guy?
um, I gotta tell you, um, for a primer, the very best, all of John Green's books.
Okay.
All of John Green's publications. That's number one. Number one, and maybe number only.
Wow. Yeah.
Chris Murphy's book. I can't remember the title of Chris Murphy's book right now, but that's super a lot of fun.
Okay.
That's really good. But I got to tell you, um, the my gig is the historical Bigfoot
Right.
research,
Right. Right.
old
Yep.
stories. And so before John Green and the Horsemen, as they say, Renee
Exactly.
DeHinden and Patterson, these were all just kind of stories floating around. But in the late 50s, early 60s, these were the guys, Patterson and Peter Byrne, John Green. These were the guys who really started to get into this. And this is
Mm.
why I'm talking to you today, is
Yeah.
because
Totally.
of those guys. And getting in, particularly John Green, because he was a newspaper man, a newspaper editor and writer. He investigated thoroughly and really got down to brass tacks and wrote prolifically on that. And everything basically up to his death, when he was still writing, is going to
Wow.
give a solid foundation about how we got here.
Mm.
How we got here. The other thing too, which actually you and I were talking about Amy Boo, that we
Hmm.
Amy and I were talking this morning or yesterday, that the next generation down from Byrne and Green in the early 70s, mid 70s, they inspired a whole next generation
Okay.
of researchers, many of whom are still alive today.
Mm.
Robert Morgan, uh,
Oh,
Ron
right.
Olson,
Yeah.
I'm not
Robert Morgan.
sure.
Totally. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that Ron Olson is or was alive, who did a lot of films in the early 70s. He's still alive. Dick Grover is still alive. He's in Nevada. These guys were intensively researching Bigfoot in the early mid 70s and through the 80s. And these guys are still around. Again, these guys are still around. These
Yeah.
guys need to be brought back onto the scene. Yeah. Oh, John Andrews as well. I hear he's in Eastern Washington. These guys need to be brought. Larry Lund. They need to be brought back on the scene and brought back on the speaking circuit, because
Hmm.
John
Totally.
John
Yep.
Green's dead. Roger Patterson's dead. Bob Gimlin's still around, and Bob was nice enough to sit down with me for about 2 hours
Oh,
and
wow.
talk about Ape Canyon.
Oh,
Um,
man.
so Bob's still around, but this next generation, they're getting
Hmm.
older. They're gonna die
Yeah. I think
sometime. We're
Robert
gonna get
Morgan
those
is like
stories.
89, I think, because I was like, after I watched that documentary, I was like, I'm going to interview Robert Morgan today. And then
Yeah,
it's like, he's 89 years old. Okay, maybe not. And also like yeah, I don't know is what's going on right now, but like I am getting to the point where I will be able to do interviews over just like if the person just has a phone, I'll be able to patch that in,
sure.
which I think is pretty will be good for like maybe the older generation. I can get some of those interviews, but we'll see.
Well,
Yeah.
particularly with like Morgan or Ron Olson, who were like intensively researching this, and they were
Mhm.
filmmakers. They're still around, but their footage that they
Mm,
shot
so
is
good.
still around. They
Yep.
need to be brought back in, and that footage needs to be protected, because there's probably a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the film that may be still in cans in their garage. So,
I don't want, you don't want to think about that, but it's like it's probably true. And then there's going to be an estate sale in the future, and hopefully the right guy gets there to buy it or the right gal. It's
yeah,
just like you
right,
never know.
exactly.
You never know.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
man,
You bet.
this has been super fun.
Me too.
Mark, thank you for coming on. Like this has been a really
Oh,
good time.
sure.
Um,
Jeremiah, anytime. No, it's been
yeah,
a lot of fun.
totally. Is there a I don't think that you said that, but it's kind of nebulous. There's not a date you're shooting towards for that book because you have to do a few more trips to get the stuff.
Yeah, I have a few
Yeah.
more trips, and I got about 2 or 3 more chapters to grind
Okay.
out.
Cool. Cool.
Um, it's a book.
Yeah.
and I work as a land surveyor and as an aquarist, and
Yeah.
also we
Exactly.
have 3 kids. It'll get
Oh,
out, but
geez. Yeah.
I'm still shooting for this. Let's see, it's 2021. I'm still shooting for this year.
Wow. More power to you, dude.
Oh,
Mm,
thanks, man.
cool. So I think that this is gonna be. I think we'll kind of wrap it up here. Again,
Okay.
I'm even gonna put this in my show notes that there are other interviews of you that if people are like, wow, this is really fun, then you need to go listen to Monster X because you go crazy hard in the paint, as the kids say. It's really good. But you are going to stay on for a few
Heck
more
yeah,
minutes to share some more stories in
you bet.
the Patreon section of the Bigfoot Society After Dark. Mark is going to share some stories. If you want to hear that, you can help support the podcast, $5 a month. We are at 62% listeners supported. Thanks, guys. You guys rock. But
Nice.
thanks again for coming on, Mark. This has been really fun.
Oh, of course. No, it's been a lot of fun for sure. I could talk about
Awesome.
Ape Canyon all day long. So,
Before you go, can you, in case someone hasn't heard you before, can you do a quick like, hey, this is how you can, are you, do you put stuff out there? Can people follow you, or like it
oh,
seems like you're very busy. If
well, I
there's
am
stuff to
very,
plug, go ahead.
and yeah, and I am not. I'm really good at working, but I'm
Yeah.
not really good at personal exploitation.
Mm.
So I don't have a podcast yet. Yet maybe.
But you're getting a book,
Yeah, I'm getting a
which is
book out,
huge.
and I gotta say, possibly a podcast. I'm not gonna like have any competition with you or
Oh
anything like
my
that,
goodness. That would
but
be amazing.
maybe. But really, if you want to hear me blather on about all kinds of stuff, music,
Hmm.
fishing, aquarium, Bigfoot, just get me on Facebook. Oh,
Cool.
shoot. I just noticed this whole time, I'm Catherine Marcell down in the lower left-hand corner. But anyway,
That's great. Zoom, you've done it again.
so whoops. But
Whoops.
anyway, my last name is spelled correctly, but it's
Nice.
you don't spell it like Catherine, you spell it like Mark with a C.
Yeah,
And,
right.
you can just get me on Facebook.
Okay.
I basically
Cool.
friend everybody.
You're a nice guy. You're a nice guy.
Thanks.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for
Oh,
coming on,
same.
and hopefully
Absolutely.
we'll talk to you in the future once your book comes out, and yeah,
Yes, and
we'll see you
also
around.
do not ever come to the Pacific Northwest without calling me.
Oh,
So
Mark,
give me a ring.
that means a
You know.
lot. Thank you.
So
That means a lot.
I don't know if we can go up on the mountain, but we can go out fishing or just make dinner and have some wine or
That
whatever.
would be rock and roll. I would
So
love
yeah,
that.
okay.
That would be
Okay.
rock and roll.
All
All
right,
right.
good.
Thanks for coming on.
You bet.
All
Absolutely. It
right.
was a lot of fun.